Don't be the leader who did nothing about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Be the hero they need you to be. That's the tagline for a company known as Go Culture International, one in which if you partner, you'll be given access to mobile-based assessment and training certification in DE&I. Dr. Justin Velten is the CEO and co-founder of Go Culture International, and he joined me this week to discuss the software, the company, and how they work with companies to improve their work culture, diversity, and morale. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Dr. Velten, if you're ready, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm excited to learn all about Go Culture this morning. Great to be with you, and thanks for being here.
Kevin, thank you so much. It's an honor. I appreciate the invitation. I look forward to the conversation, especially on your 32nd birthday.
Well, thanks so much for that, and I'm excited to dive into Go Culture, and all of the great stuff that you do there with your organization. I know that your tagline says that you want people to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, and be the leaders that you want them to be. So, if you could just begin by telling me the great work that you do there at Go Culture International.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That's a great question. So we provide a bit, I say a bit, quite a drastically different model around diversity, equity, inclusion than it's been done in the past. So, in the 1970s, we began to realize that sexual harassment in the workplace was such an important topic that we began to make sure everybody was equipped with best practices, with education, with learning to minimize the risk of more and more sexual harassment taking place in the workplace. Well, though it's been, a long time, nearly 50 years since that, we still believe sexual harassment is that important. But even though it's been 50 more years, we also believe now at Go Culture that DEI work is equally, if not more important than the sexual harassment. So for some reason though, we haven't been treating it the same in how we attack and how we educate, how we prepare, and how we mitigate those things. And so that's what we do at Go Culture. We're kind of disrupting, transforming the way we think about DEI work. In the past, it's been a lot of kind of training the C-suite or board members. We're moving past that, and we're trying to bring training to every single employee about best practices. How do we do a better job in our diversity, equity, inclusion mindset, our attitudes and behaviors?
And I know that for you, it's a big part on providing an inclusive workplace. So I'm wondering, for just a second, if we can talk about the importance of technology and the role that plays in providing individuals with disabilities a chance to be actively involved in the workplace.
Yeah, technology has just transformed everything. And if we didn't believe that, then there was COVID, right? And it forced a lot of people to really make some adaptations for a more technologically advanced way of doing things. I once heard, Kevin, that anything we learn about that is researched and published and discovered in an educational institution, higher education. I was a university prof for 14 years. In that world, even though it is discovered, it takes 30 years to be implemented in the workplace, in the classroom, and those things. We have taken that 30 years and just compressed it with COVID and said, well, what we would have taken 30 years to implement, we're implementing aggressively now. And so I think because of that, we are taking technological advances that would have been slowly adopted through workplaces that serve individuals who maybe are unable to do certain tasks, and now they're able to be right up and be able to work and do certain things that before people may have thought, well, I don't think you're a great candidate for this because here are the reasons why. Because of these technological advances and because we're accepting them so rapidly now as norm, then that allows individuals who beforehand might not have been considered for candidacy are now in a much better spot. So I think these technologies that we're seeing, and then they're all over the place from one end of the spectrum to the other. Those technologies are allowing individuals who before were not given a shot to have a shot, and that's exciting.
And tell me, in your estimation, how do you think the advancement of technology, certainly in the time of COVID, can help us advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We did a study a number of years ago about how it was kind of this was of course pre-COVID, but this was how video chatting, we use the word terminology Zoom or Google Meets or whatever, this kind of video conferencing, how that could influence our relationships with individuals long distance. Research has always shown us in interpersonal relationship development, if you get to know somebody, one of the reasons we end up liking or getting to know somebody is because we're just around them, proximity, high frequency. So in the workplace, if you're with somebody a lot, tendency is to become friends with that person, find them more appealing. And so likewise, if you're working with individuals from campuses detached, so from around the world or around the country, we are less attached to those individuals because we're just on the phone with them and things. So we did a study and we found that actually, if we were to use a video conference instead of phone, we found that we could actually close that gap. It was a perception gap. People had the perception that they were in each other's presence. And again, going back to what we knew before, if we can increase that presence, the perception of it, then that increases likelihood, that increases the fact that how much we like each other. So transform that onto what we know now. So if individuals who maybe were long distance before and or in person are now able to see each other more frequently through video, through this kind of conferencing like what you and I are doing right now from Texas, and you're in Canada, this great distance, then it breaks down this kind of geographical barrier, and it allows you and me, for example, to build a relationship. And if we ever meet in person, it will be as if we have met before. So it allows those relationships to be developed, even though before they were not being developed.
And I have to tell you, Doctor, you've given me a reason to travel down to Dallas. We have to meet in person, buddy.
Hey, you want to do it right about now, Kevin, while the weather's pleasant here and it's frigid where you are.
Well, if we didn't have COVID, I would be hopping on an airplane tomorrow, but that's okay. So, Doctor, can you also tell me your thoughts on how the conversation of inclusion has advanced over, say, the last 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. You and I and so many others in this field know that this has always been an important topic, but sadly, what tends to happen is organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, whatever the organization may be, higher ed even, we tend to focus on what is in the news cycle. And so it seems like over the last 10 to 11 months, along with COVID, the news cycle has really focused on diversity, equity, inclusion. And so, though we have known it's important for a long time, forever, it seems like there has been this kind of awakening to the importance. And so I think we find ourselves in a very unique opportunity. I think in the past, Kevin, that there have been these kind of ups and downs, a roller coaster kind of ride, if you will, when it comes to the importance or the perceived importance of diversity, excuse me, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there have been these high moments of great attention to this, and then there are these low moments. It comes and goes. I think now, though, what we're seeing is that there's so much more attention placed on this, and it's not going away. And that is wonderful news, because now we can actually begin to establish a firm place in the workplace. Again, sexual harassment has had a firm place in the workplace for decades now, and we've seen some impact from that. Likewise, we want to be able to have a place at the table in the workplace, and we're seeing more and more of that. And so inclusion is becoming more than what it used to be. It used to be talent acquisition, demographic spread. How many people who fit in these molds are we hiring each quarter? And that was a step in the right direction. But what we're trying to do, Kevin, is we're trying to move beyond that and say, yes, you may hire a certain number of people in certain whatever group you want to call, but are you placing them in a workplace where they are accepted, where they are included, where they feel like they belong? Or are you just throwing them into the wolves, as we would say? We want to create that organizational mindset to improve those DEI attitudes and behaviors for every single employee, so that as new people come in, they have a much more rich experience.
And I wonder, Doctor, if you had a message to employers about the importance of inclusion and incorporating diversity into the workforce. What would be your message to employers, particularly surrounding the importance of hiring people with disabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. Yeah, I think, for one, is we're going to see a movement. We are already seeing a movement. We're going to see even a greater and more sustained movement toward DEI frameworks being a part of the workplace. So much so that, like we have seen individuals evaluate their prospective employer just as much as the employer evaluates a prospective employee, we're going to see those employee pools looking for organizations that really score high in areas of diversity, equity, inclusion beyond again, just how many people are you hiring, for certain reasons. So are you a group where you are inclusive, you treat each other fairly, those types of things. So we're moving to kind of an economy where these employees can look and be able to discover, is this the kind of place where I want to work, based on their DEI scorings and how they handle those things. I think that's important for organizations to understand. On the other hand of that, though, or hand in hand with that, I think it's also important for them to understand, like you said earlier, due to technologies that are becoming more and more rapidly available, individuals who they might not have considered before can be some of your best candidates for various reasons. But one, they can do the job and do it really, really, really well through the technology that is now available across the board to all these organizations. So I think we're going to see kind of a revolution if that's not too strong of a word, Kevin, to use, revolution in how these organizations are going to feel, in some cases liberated by the fact that, okay, now we can expand hiring practices because of the technology that's available to us.
And I know at Go Culture you focus on workplace assessment through technology. So tell me, what benefits would a company have by using your service to sort of navigate their diversity, equity, and inclusion mandate as a company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So many companies, Kevin, you remember back midsummer, early summer, all these companies were coming out, CEOs were saying, hey, we are recommitting to diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, all these kinds of statements. And that was exciting to see. It was rich to see that. I think with those organizations now, in a lot of places, what they're struggling with is, well, we made these big commitments, but like, what do we actually do with these commitments? How can I actually impact my entire workplace? How can I, in some cases, how can I impact my communities, my customers, all these things? That starts to get a pretty big, pretty lofty claims that were made. But we're fortunately, what we're able to do now through scalable technology is to be able to deliver on those promises, on those commitments. We're able to help those organizations reach across their entire enterprise and their sphere of influence by providing training, evaluation, measurement, all these things around diversity, equity, inclusion. It's such a different way of thinking about this. And one of the things that we're really excited about, Kevin, with these organizations is our goal as a company is to not only provide this kind of training for organizations and employee bases, but is to, at the same time, try our best to change a generation. Because I believe, Kevin, if we can reach back into early childhood development all the way K through 12 and take what we have researched over the last 20 years and developed and make it digestible, understandable, engaging for age groups, then we can begin changing generations by adapting early stage childhood development all the way through high school graduation or beyond. So we're beginning to look at partnerships with large organizations who want to provide the funding for us to be able to go into these schools and provide these free services, these free app-based services for these K-12 education programs.
And Doctor, my final question for you has to do with what has you most excited about the future of Go Culture International?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things, Kevin, that we're working on that really are, that really is exciting to us. I think, not to go backward, but to really, I probably let the cat out of the bag a little early there, because that's probably one of the things that we're most excited about is that K-12 initiative, or just change a generation initiative. What we want to do is to be able to provide at no cost for these K-12 programs an intuitive app for students, families to be able to engage and learn an age-appropriate, grade-appropriate programming about best practices and how do I develop as an individual and how I treat other people. Some of us think, well, that's just second nature stuff, right? I mean, that we should all, well, for some reason we haven't done that well at it, right? And so, but if I can train a third grader, and then that third grader becomes a fourth grader and relearns those things in a little bit more robust way, and then even all the way up, you're relearning these things. Well, I tell you, that can have an incredible impact over the next 10 to 20 years or beyond. And for people, Kevin, like 20 years from now, if you and I were having this conversation, that simple act would have an incredible impact on these questions that you're asking and the answers that I'm giving. So we're really excited about that.
Hey, Doctor, I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a subject that I'm very passionate about, and I want to thank you for lending your expertise and knowledge on the subject and for spending some time with me on my birthday. It's most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here this morning.
Kevin, I really appreciate it, man. I wish you the best on the birthday, and I wish you warmer weather. There you go. That's my birthday
I
wish.
appreciate that in the middle of a polar vortex there, Doctor. It's most appreciated.
Well, I'll go outside and try to see if I can't push some warm air your way.
Some virtual heat would be most appreciated for sure.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.